you had this revival of Team Canada and sudden patriotism, and they were denouncing anyone who disagreed with them as traitors. They were literally calling Danielle Smith, the one woman trying to save things, calling her a traitor. Where was this Team Canada approach? Building pipelines, building tankers, or how about even free trade internally? And I was thinking, if you've ever been to the States and bought eggs or milk or cheese, you'll notice how much cheaper it is. It's about half price. Who put those tariffs on us to make us pay double for dairy and poultry? And by the way, if you've been anywhere other than Canada, you know that their dairy selection is so much better, whether it's yogurt or butter or whatever. Who was that dastardly person who put the tariffs on us for that? Was it Donald Trump? No. It was in our own government, who have national supply management, that's what they call it, where they make it illegal to produce milk or poultry or other things like that without the government's permission, without a license from the government. They call it supply management because of the law of supply and demand. They restrict the supply so the price goes up. That was done to us by our own government. But while I'm on a rant about that, who put the tariffs on us for the big banks with their awful service and their very low interest rate savings accounts and all their fees? Who said we can only do business with Canadian banks instead of American banks? Why can't there be American banks competing for our business here? And the worst of all are cell phones and the internet. I think you probably know, again, if you've ever traveled, that Canada's cell phone rates are literally amongst the highest in the world, especially for data. Who did that to us? Was that Donald Trump? No, everything I've just listed in the last 5 minutes was done to us by ourselves. And Trump on February 1st brought in tariffs that would have hit the oil patch with 10% and everyone else with 25%. You know what's happening in just a couple of months? On April 1st, Justin Trudeau is ratcheting up the carbon tax by how much? By 19%. Who did that to us? Who's devastating our economy? Trudeau and our closed socialist system. So yeah, Donald Trump is mean. He's mean to people who are mean to him first. I mentioned the nicknames and the 51st state cage rattling. Well, don't think that Justin Trudeau hasn't done his share of taunting Trump. In fact, far worse, calling him a sexual assaulter, saying he is fomenting violence and insurrection. Here's Trudeau talking about January 6th.
What we witnessed was an assault on democracy by violent rioters, incited by the current president and other politicians. As shocking, deeply disturbing, and frankly saddening as that event remains, we've also seen this week that democracy is resilient in America, our closest ally and neighbor. Violence has no place in our societies, and extremists will not succeed in overruling the will of the people. As Canadians, I think we've been all reflecting on our own country, something I spoke with the premiers about last night, about the fact that democracy is not automatic. It takes work every day. About what a real accomplishment it is to maintain a political system in which the losing side gracefully concedes and in which rival political parties between elections work together for the common good. We have this in Canada because Canadians make it possible. Canadians expect their political leaders to protect our precious democracy by how we conduct ourselves.
Chrystia Freeland attended an event that compared Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, calling them both tyrants. And here's Chrystia Freeland rollicking in the fact that Trump doesn't like her, and she wants to emphasize that. Is that someone who wants to get a deal, or is that someone who wants to fight Trump to the detriment of the whole country?
I want to let you in on a little secret. Donald Trump doesn't like me very much.
Canada, we don't like their representative very much.
I'm a tough negotiator. During the first Trump administration, I fought hard to protect Canadian jobs, the Canadian economy, and our way of life. And we won. I left Trudeau's cabinet because I know what we need to do to win that fight again. Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies think they can push us around. Trump thinks we're for sale, but he can take what isn't his. I'm not going to let him.
Well, anyways, today was the day they pulled the trigger. Donald Trump pulled the trigger, 25% on everything except for energy, which was 10%. And there was actually, it happened on February 1st, happened 2 days ago. Now, there was lots of Canada bashing online, including from conservatives that I think a lot of conservative Canadians typically like. Vice President J.D. Vance, Matt Gaetz, the former congressman and short-lived nominee for Attorney General. And they were sort of mocking Canada and said, you had it coming. But I responded in a few tweets myself, some of which got quite a lot of views. How is it helping America to put a tariff on Canadian oil? I said that to Matt Gaetz. I said, if you're not going to buy your oil from Canada, who are you going to buy it from that's better? And by the way, if you're not buying our oil, who would you like us to sell it to? The obvious answer being China would love to get their paws on it. So from an America first, America-centric, what's right for the little guy in America point of view, how does going after Canada help? I mean, going after any industry in Canada just raises the price in America. The answer might be, well, you'll move those factories home. But like I say, by far the largest export to America is oil sands. You cannot move them. They will continue to pump oil. And if America doesn't buy it, who would America rather have their hands on that enormous strategic asset? And both J.D. Vance and Matt Gaetz and so many others showed their disdain for Trudeau. Hey, me too. I'm not sure if there's anyone in Canada who's not an elected opposition politician who has expressed more antagonism towards Justin Trudeau as we have at Rebel News. I mean, we're suing them in so many ways. They sue us. We've published 5 books about Trudeau. We campaign against him with billboard trucks. It's a brutal fight. Believe me, I don't let a lot of people say they're bigger, opponents of Trudeau than I am. But how does shooting at Canadian workers hurt Justin Trudeau? He's a gazillionaire. He's only got 5 more weeks on the job. That's my point. That J.D. Vance and Matt Gaetz and these tariffs were shooting at Trudeau, but they were hitting Canadian industries and, more to the point, hitting American consumers, including who buys Canadian oil, American refineries. Now, in the end, after 2 days, there was a reprieve, and I don't think that tariffs actually took effect because it was over the weekend. Trump brought them in on February 1st, as he promised, and today on February 3rd, he undoes them. And I want to read to you his announcements that they were over. He had 2 phone calls today, and let me read them, his readout. They're very similar. On Truth Social, Trump said, I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specially designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for a 1-month period during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent, Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives of Mexico. I look forward to participating in these negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a deal between our 2 countries. So what has Trump got? He's got Mexico's attention, and if it's true, he'll have 10,000 Mexican soldiers dedicating to stop migrants before they get to the border. Now, I don't know how many were tasked with that mission beforehand, but I don't think they were quite as attentive as they're going to be in the next 30 days. Do you? And then at 3 p.m., Trump had his phone call with Justin Trudeau. And I'm not sure if you could say Canada caved, but let me read to you what Trudeau agreed to do. And you tell me if this is more Trudeau-y or more Trump-y. Canada has agreed to ensure we have a secure northern border and to finally end the deadly scourge of drugs like fentanyl that have been pouring into our country, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans while destroying their families and communities all across our country. Canada will implement their $1.3 billion plan, and as per Prime Minister Trudeau, will be, quote, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. I have also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we will be backing it with $200 million. As president, it is my responsibility to ensure the safety of all Americans, and I am doing just that. I am very pleased with this initial outcome, and the tariffs announced on Saturday will be paused for a 30-day period to see whether or not a final economic deal with Canada can be structured. Fairness for all. Now, in some ways, you could say that Trudeau held the line. He had already announced $1.3 billion, which is not a lot of money for a border over the course of time. Agreeing to, in the future, appoint a fentanyl czar. Okay, so who's that going to be? Just some, token? Is that going to be Melanie Jolie? Like, what does it even mean? What powers will they have? I think designating cartels as terrorists, but it's unclear if America's doing that on its own or Canada too. I think Trudeau can rightly say that Trump sorta blinked. But on the other hand, I think Trump succeeded in getting Canada's full attention and making our country take border control seriously for the first time. What it also did, and what I'm hopeful, is that it woke Canadians up to the peril of having only one customer for our oil and gas. The word monopoly is when there's only one person one person selling and everyone has to buy from them, so the price goes up. But when there's only one person buying, it's called a monopsony. It's the opposite, and your price goes down and you're beholden to them. If we had pipelines and tankers that could sell our oil anywhere in the world, we would be in a much better negotiating position.